Module 2, Introduction to 3D. Today we're going to model this wooden chair. And the chair is actually taken from the textbook, chapter 13. And in the textbook they modeled this, or they drew it as a pictorial, isometric drawing. But we're going to draw this using solid modeling techniques. Alrighty, let's get started. So you're going to want to use a B-size architectural title block. And so we have the ARC templates located right here. And you can download the drawing template and open that file. Now the thing about architectural templates and architectural drawings is that we have the units set up in architectural units. And so if we were to look at the format for the units for this title block, it's set for feet and inches or architectural units. Now I've already gotten a good start on this drawing. And so in a previous session, I went through and have the 2D geometry in the part modeled. So I'm not going to go through the actual aspect of creating the two-dimensional geometry, because I think we covered that in the 134 class. But the idea would be to draw the object on a furniture layer or an object layer, complete the 2D geometry with the front view, the right side view, and the top view, and then to dimension that two-dimensional object in model space, and then to create a viewport where we would have our two-dimensional geometry shown in the top view, and then we'll create another viewport for the 3D. So let's get started. If we come back here to the model space, I can toggle off my layer with my dimensions here. I'm just going to turn off my dimension layer. And then I'm going to copy that geometry to an area somewhere on the screen where that's not going to get in the way. So I'm just going to say, select those, we'll copy them, and then we'll go over here and we'll paste it. Alrighty, and so we have our geometry for the chair, and it depends how we want to model this. If we want to start off by modeling this from the top view, we can model the height of the chair, legs, and then the seat along with the back of the chair. And so I think we'll try that from the start. And so what we'll do is we'll create a 3D layer. And you can choose a color that you would like. I'm going to choose this brownish color. I'll use a continuous line type for that, and I'll put a line weight of 0.5 millimeters on that. And I'll make that the default. I'll close out my layer, grab an isometric view, zoom in on that area. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start to create the model for that. And so we can go ahead and use press pull to pull those legs up a height of 2 feet 10 inches. And so here's the back legs. They go up 2 feet 10 inches. And the other legs go up 1 foot 7 inches. And we could subtract 2 inches off of that if we wanted to model to the bottom of the chairs, which I think I'll do. And so let's start off with the back two legs, 2 feet 10 inches. And we're going to use a 3D modeling workspace. We're in our 3D layer. And if we press pull, then we can kind of see how that geometry is starting to move up into the direction. We can do this in a conceptual. Sometimes I'll toggle back to a wireframe, because wireframe always works. And when you're in conceptual, you get some graphic card issues depending on your computer. So we'll press pull this up a height of 2 feet 10 inches. And you don't have to put the quotes on it for inches, it's the default. And it'll bring that up 2 feet 10 inches. And we can do that again for the other corner. All right, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to then bring up the other two legs, and the other two legs are going to be a height of, we're going to make that 1 foot 7 inches, but we're going to take the 2 inches off, so we're going to make it 1 foot 5 inches for these two front legs. Again, we'll just use press pull. And then for the boundary of the chair shape itself, what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a rectangle around the perimeter rather than to sort through all the geometry that I have here. Now, if you hold shift and push the middle mouse wheel, you can kind of orbit, kind of like you're playing an Xbox type of game. I prefer that method to navigate around rather than to go find the view orbit icon. It's just quicker. And so what I'll do is I'll create a rectangle from this corner right here to this corner right here. And then I'll take that rectangle that I just created, and that's not it. I'm going to delete that line. It's underneath it. Sometimes you'll have lines on top of lines. You either put them on a layer that's turned off, or in this case, I just erased it. You can always get it back and draw another one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that. And there's a couple of different ways we can do it. If we use press pull, we may get some interference from these other geometries here. If we use extrude, we can just extrude it right here on the floor, and we can extrude that up 2 inches, and I think I'll just go with that for right now. And then in the simplest terms, we can just use a move with object snaps, and we're just working in the three-dimensional element. So we'll select our move command, and I just use a regular move. It works in all three axes, and I'll take it from this corner here to this corner right here. And now we have completed the location for that. Now, these are activities here. Since we've modeled it with solids, we can actually union these together, and then we are going to be able to have a solid shape that we could 3D print. Because right now we've just got these pieces and they're all independent. So I can move them wherever I like. Same with the legs on the chair. But if we fuse them together, if we glue them with union, we can then union the chair to the legs. And now you can see we've got a bond there. If I move, you can start to see it's starting to come together. That last piece, I don't know why it came together. I think I grabbed through it. But we'll union that as well. And so you can see it highlights the parts that are fused together or glued together. And then we'll union the back of the chair. All right. So that's that component. And then the other part of the component is the back for your backrest right here. And I'm going to delete out the center line layer. And we're going to press pull this to a thickness of 1 inch. And so here's the back of our chair. This is really, a nice little chair for maybe a young child or something like that. Something to play at a play table, kind of thing that we would make in the wood shop back when I was in high school teacher. And so the project isn't that complicated as far as to be able to create the back of the chair. If you read the dimensions, what we can see is that the thickness of the back here is 1 inch, and then it just goes right between these two centers, And if you've detailed this correctly, you'll have this type of a design. So when we press pull things, what it'll do is it'll create a region out of the boundary shape and then extrude it. If we were to just straight up try to extrude these different line geometries, what we would get would be surfaces. And surfaces are fine, you know, for doing things like mapping toolpaths and in manufacturing. But for our purposes, we want to use solids because they're better, because we can actually use them for 3D printing and other activities. And you can still map cutting CAD/CAM tools to these as well. It's just with surfaces, you can't do Boolean activities. And so the key is to be able to understand that when you extrude something, that you need a boundary shape. So for example, if I extruded the circle, it will extrude as a solid because it's a boundary shape. It's got a closed contour. So if we look at that, it's a 3D solid, and those are more powerful, those are better. And so we want to gravitate towards those, just like instead of drawing in isometric, we're drawing in 3D because we can walk around the chair and model it and create the prototypes for that. So with that said, if we were going to create this object with extrude, what we would need to do would be to region it. And so what we would do is we'd say region, and then if I get that command, let me try it again. We'd select the objects to region it, and it might not quite work because I've got that outside shape that's hanging off. Yeah, it didn't region the outside, it just regioned those inside shapes. Or what we would do is we would create a rectangle, and then we'd be able to extrude that rectangle. And like I say, sometimes you'll get lines on top of lines, so we'll delete that. And then we could extrude that, our 1 inch. And if I go out of a conceptual and go to 2D wireframe, we could then extrude the other holes. And this is the hard way of doing it. Rather than just press, pull it, and boom, we're done, I wanted to explain the extrude function, 1 inch, so you can see what press pull does. What press pull does is it combines creating a region and creating these Boolean activities, which you can see when you make this conceptual. You'll see we were able to get everything to the correct thickness, but then we have one more step where we have to subtract, select the large piece, hit enter, and then we have to subtract the whole geometry. And I could do all these in one shape, but I find if I repeat it, people will catch it maybe on the second or third time. So that's a valid shape, and I can move it, and I just kind of throw things around in 3D space like this. If I undo this, I can get back the geometry that I had before. And I can just press pull it. And so most people will just say, oh, well, let's just do that 1 inch. And that's fine. I just wanted to show the differences between it. And then the next thing we're going to do here is we're just going to place this in the right orientation. And so that's sort of the trick, is how do you locate things in 3D? And so it's 2 inches from the top edge to the back of the chair. And the way that I would do it would be I would just move this up, and you can do some 3D rotate commands. And so if we use the gizmos here, we can use the rotate gizmo, and we can select our part here, hit enter. I'm not real great with that 3D gizmo. Let's try it again. I use rotate 3D, and I'm not sure what the exact difference is on it. Let's see if we can figure that out. And it looks like this thing changed its thickness here, so let me back that up a little bit. And let's just press pull this 1 inch again. It looks, and now as we complete the rotation, I'm going to go with rotate 3D or 3D rotate. I'll select the object to rotate. I'll hit enter. I'll place the glyph or the gizmo on the corner. I'll choose the axes to rotate about. So the red one is the x-axis, the green one is the y-axis, and the blue one is the z-axis. And so I'm going to grab, and you don't have to know which one's which. You can do it by eye. I'm going to grab the red axis and point my polar tracking north, and then I'm going to track it until it comes out here. Now, if it grabs an O-snap, it's going to fight with you. That's not necessarily a good thing. Another way that we can 3D rotate these is by using ortho. And then you don't have to worry about it becoming like 89 degrees or just slightly off so that it doesn't look right. And so again, we can 3D rotate. Put the gizmo, I like to put it on the lower corners, select the axis, drive it north, and then it'll just go in 90-degree increments now because we have ortho on. Ortho means orthogonal, meaning it'll only work in straight lines, 90-degree angles. I'm going to turn the ortho off, and then I'm just going to move it with a regular move from the back corner to the back corner like that. And so it's placed here between the two parts. And then what I can do is I can shift it down 2 inches, and I believe I can use the move gizmo. If I click on the move gizmo and click on it, and then I grab this rocket in the Z direction, or the Z axis, and then I just start to move it in the direction I want, I can then move it down the 2 inches required. Now it's not centered on the back of the chair, and so if we were to center it on the back of the chair, it looks to me like our chair is, these are 2 inch by 2 inch square profiles, and we've got a 1 inch thick part here, so we want to move it a 1/2 inch the other way. So we can get the 3D move gizmo and then move it in this direction. And then we want to kind of track it out there and then type in 0.5. Hit escape to clear the grips. Shift middle mouse wheel, and you can see if you have that centered on the part. All right, so all we have to do is union it together now. So we'll union the chair to the back of it. And then as we go through and we create our layouts for the chair, you'll notice that my layers are off. And so if I come back in here, I can turn on my dimension layers. And if we were to recreate this, and I was to go with my basic title block, what I would do, here's your original viewport that comes with the title block. And what we want to do is we want to find our 2D geometry for that. And we kind of want to dial that in and set that at a scale. And so we could start with 1/8 of an inch, which is usually tiny. I think 1 inch equals a foot might be better. Yeah. And so we'll set this up at a scale of 1 inch equals a foot so that when we print out the paper, the facilities people can measure it, and they're going to want to do that. And so we'll lock that scale in. We'll double click outside of the viewport, and then you can do this a couple of ways, but I like to avoid having overlapping viewports. And so I'll just scoot this one over here. It's on the viewport layer. I'll hit escape, and then I'll create a circle in paper space, and I'm going to make that on the viewport layer. And you can have more than one viewport layer. We'll talk about those as we get artistic with the software. And so once we create the geometry in paper space, I can come in here, show my menu bar, and go to my viewports and select object, and it will become a viewport. So a circular object or a polygon object, a closed boundary shape. can be a viewport. And then I'll double click in there and I'll go find my three-dimensional chair. And I believe I modeled it kind of right on top of that one there. So if I go and change my viewpoint perspective, we can actually move it in while we're in the viewport. You don't necessarily have to toggle into model space, just like that. And then we can maybe zoom in on it just slightly. And we'll set up the visual style. There's a couple of different ways you can set up the visual style. I'll usually just click in the viewport and then activate the visual style right here for conceptual. But if you were in Paperspace and you clicked on the viewport itself, and then if you right click, and you don't have to necessarily be on the grip like that, but you can go into the viewport display settings. And so you can lock the viewport here, and you can then set the viewport shade plot settings. And then when it plots it, it'll show it as that. But apparently it didn't upgrade or show it while it's in there, so I'm just going to do it the old way. And so I'll double click within that viewport. Conceptual. And then depending on how you want to work the exercise, I might want to take this viewport layer and turn that one off too, just to make it look a little cleaner. It took my other one with it as well, so let me undo that. And then if we wanted to take this one, rather than turn off both of those, I have multiple viewport layers. I'll put it on a viewport layer that I turned off. Double check your scale, 1 inch equals a foot. Update the title block information so that when we go down to buy our furniture and meet with the people who are going to be installing it, they feel that it can get through the door and will look the way they want it to look in the room. Be sure to put your name on it. CAD 136. Fill in the date, and again put another note with the scale in it. And we'll save this drawing and then submit it to the Dropbox. Alrighty, so that completes this video tutorial on how to model the chair.